Hello everyone, and welcome to the Barbican Sculpture Court. I'm Stephen Sloss. I'm currently writing a book on Godzilla for Bloomsbury and the BFI. It's my pleasure to introduce The Return of Godzilla to you this evening. You're very lucky to be seeing this film here tonight because while The Return of Godzilla did screen in the UK back in the 1980s, it was in a highly edited edition retitled Godzilla 1985. Tonight, you're watching the original unedited Japanese cut, which has never been shown theatrically in the UK before, which technically makes tonight its UK premiere over 40 years after it was first released in Japan. Now, when it was released in 1984, The Return of Godzilla was the first Godzilla film in 9 years, following Terror of Mechagodzilla in 1975. The film is partially the result of a fan campaign by a group who called themselves the Godzilla Resurrection Committee, who were dissatisfied with Godzilla's almost decade-long absence from the big screen. The franchise's long-term producer Tomoyuki Tanaka took notice of the group and decided it was time to bring Godzilla back. When reviving the franchise for the Cold War 1980s, however, Tanaka elected to return Godzilla to its stark anti-nuclear roots. To this end, The Return of Godzilla ignores every film produced after the 1954 original, functioning as a legacy sequel to that film only. The Return of Godzilla updates the original film's themes of nuclear irresponsibility into a potent Cold War political thriller. Now, when you're watching The Return of Godzilla this evening, I want you to keep in mind other films like John Carpenter's The Thing, Philip Kaufman's Invasion of the Body Snatchers, Chuck Russell's The Blob, and David Cronenberg's The Fly. The Return of Godzilla very much belongs to this cycle of iconic 1950s science fiction monsters revived for the late 1970s and throughout the 80s, with a strong focus on paranoid horror. There's a sequence near the beginning of the film where the journalist Goro Maki investigates a derelict ship, and it's especially reminiscent of Macready and Doc making their way through the ruins of the Norwegian camp near the beginning of The Thing. Now, this screening is part of the Barbican's Feel the Sound exhibition, which invites you to think about sound and how we hear in immersive new ways. While kaiju films are widely celebrated for their visual spectacle, I've often said that there's also nothing else that sounds quite like a Toho science fiction film, and that's true of The Return of Godzilla. From Godzilla's iconic booming roar to the sizzling twang of laser weapons to dull thunderous footsteps and popping analog explosions, the soundscape of Return of Godzilla is intricate, eerie, and alive. Over and above that, though, sound plays a very important role in the film's narrative. Without giving too much away, there's a particular sound observed by the film's characters at just the right moment that eventually develops into the means to possibly repel Godzilla. Keep an ear out for it. The film's score is by the prolific composer Reijiro Kuroku, who abandons the franchise's familiar motifs like Akira Ifukube's iconic Godzilla theme in favour of an entirely original score which appropriately lends the film the atmosphere of a paranoid thriller. The film is given a very 1980s ending with a catchy original synth-pop song performed by Dutch Europop group The Star Sisters ushering in the end credits. Now, to briefly talk about our surroundings, The Return of Godzilla features a Godzilla scaled up from the original's 50 metres to 80 metres to match the literally heightened skyline of 1980s Tokyo. Even then, the King of the Monsters is at times dwarfed by the skyscrapers of a modern metropolis. In this way, it's very fitting that we're watching the film in the brutalist high-rise surroundings of the Barbican. The Return of Godzilla was directed by Koji Hashimoto, who before this had a very prolific career as an assistant director, working on films like King Kong vs. Godzilla, Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, the disaster epic Prophecies of Nostradamus, and even Akira Kurosawa's Dodezkaden. Notable among the cast for Western audiences like us is Yasuko Sawaguchi, best known outside Japan as the voice of Chihiro's mother in Spirited Away. She also makes a brief but important appearance in Godzilla vs. Biollante, this film's direct sequel, which is also screening here at the Barbican on the 20th of September. The Return of Godzilla kicked off the second distinct period of the Godzilla franchise, known as the Heisei era, which lasted for 11 years and concluded in 1995 with Godzilla vs. Destroyer. Toho kaiju films from this period are a little bit less seen in the UK, with several of them never receiving theatrical or home video releases over here. But thanks to screenings like this and the Barbican's All Kaiju Attack Earth SOS season, which kicks off next month, UK audiences are finally getting the chance to experience films like The Return of Godzilla as they were meant to be seen. Please enjoy.